the static clears. Unwanted brotherhood of tears. Grief can weigh us down alone, but here we find a common home. The voices speak to heart and soul. In darker times they make us whole. Through Jesus' light we find our way. In every night there comes a day. From shadows to the dawn we rise. Hope reflected in...
Welcome to the Unwanted Fraternity podcast. I'm Jen Tonkinson, and I'm here with my husband, Greg Tonkinson, and we are so glad you're joining us yet again on our podcast. And we have some exciting news. We've been sharing this for a few weeks now. We are now partnering with the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network, which is just an incredible organization. And this podcast network that they have set up has a large array of different podcasts that inspire and equip parents, Christian educators, and leaders out there to equip the next generation. And so it's super easy to find this podcast network. Just go on herzogfoundation.com/podcast, and you can find all of these different topics that are just really inspirational. And then today we're talking about a different topic. I'm a little anxious and nervous maybe, but excited that we're also talking a little bit about it. Last week, Greg, we talked about your story, and I'm so grateful that you were able to share that with us. I think it gave, again, I live with you. I've been married to you. I know kind of some of these answers that you shared with us last time. So let me break and say, if you have not listened to last episode about Greg's story, please go on and do that, because it is really helpful for those of you who are on the other side of that situation where you're maybe married to a widower or a widow and just kind of have questions about what it's like to go through, like what, maybe some unanswered questions. So please look into that. But I'm so grateful that you were able to share that with us, because like I said, I felt like I knew the answers, but it really was eye-opening to me to hear just like right off the top of the head, like what you felt. So
yeah, no, it was like we've said many, many times, it's not only cathartic, but it happens less frequently than you think it does, by way of people asking you about your life, your story, and even loved ones have, children or spouses or brothers, sisters, siblings ask you about your story. Don't ever assume that because it's been 15 years that there aren't new moments, that there aren't new revelations or thoughts about, I wonder why I was thinking this. And all of a sudden now, okay, maybe it was because of that. And so I loved the conversation. It wasn't, it was right around the anniversary of Leanne's death. And so just made it difficult in that sense. But what better time, because your senses are heightened. Mm-hmm. You're more aware of, this is what we've been dealing with for the past 15 years. So I found it very enjoyable. And again, if it would help someone to just, hey, I'm going through some stuff, I need to listen to someone else's story, it's on the podcast.
Right. And I was able to ask questions that I honestly had thought about many times during the season. And I say the season because it isn't all year.
No,
it's around when March 1st happened.
Spring.
Right around spring. Yeah. I start to think, well, do I need to be more aware? Am I like,
right.
I get a little bit more sensitive to how you are feeling. And so it was helpful.
And, people that are going through grief and tragedy and whatnot, you don't need a podcast to ask these questions. Like, we have this format. And so it was, but without the format, we're not sitting around at the dinner table saying, hey, tell me about...
Right. I don't interview Greg on a regular basis.
So we have this format, but if you don't have this format, many of us don't, you've got to find ways to broach these subjects. You've got to find ways to create conversation, or else it's just going to keep going, shoved under the rug day after day
Well,
after
and
day.
you always have your perspective of like, maybe he's thinking this or maybe she's thinking that.
Yeah.
And
No,
you,
it was
until
really
you ask, you
good
don't know.
to be able to be asked the question, but also to be able to answer the question by someone who cares. And so use what we're doing here as maybe, a starting point to say to your loved ones, hey, I was listening on Wanted Fraternity. Jen was asking Greg a bunch of questions about his wife's death. I want to do the same with you. Or, use us as an excuse to talk to your loved ones about painful things. We're fine with that. Mm-hmm. The point is, talk to your loved ones about painful things. Don't assume that they're doing well. Don't assume that they're not doing well. Just take a date night or a day, and I would again recommend right around the time of whenever that painful thing happened, because they're thinking about it. It's on their mind, and it may not be fresh in your mind. What a great opportunity to say, tell me, like, what are you feeling today? Like, how's that going? But make it pointed. Don't extend it longer than it needs to be. Like throughout the whole day. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? How are you feeling? Like, that's not the point, but rather pick a moment, lunch, dinner, whatever it is, at the cemetery, wherever it may be, and just ask better questions than how are you feeling?
And even throwing this out there, set up like, I hear what you're saying is like, talk about it during a date or whatever,
Right.
but tell them ahead of time.
Right.
When we go out tonight,
I wanna
have
talk
some
about this, yeah.
questions. Just so that we continue the conversation of healing and the conversation that helps us heal, because I don't ever want to have a wrong view of what you're going through. So I really would love to have this conversation, but I want you prepared for it.
Yeah, you don't want to catch
Don't
someone
spring
off
it on
guard.
him. Yeah, no.
I thought we were going to see a movie.
No. Deep conversation.
Well, today we are going to turn the tables, and we have been. Unwanted Fraternity is a book I wrote. The podcast, ad nauseum, we've heard my story. We were in a podcast. We were being interviewed last week in a podcast, and the host of the podcast said something that kind of provoked our thoughts when he said, hey, Jennifer, I don't know your story. And that began a conversation 10, 15 minutes long of Jennifer telling the podcast host her story. And we thought, you know what? There are reasons why, the book is written and the ministry revolves around what happened back in 2010, but we don't ever want any of our listeners to think that what happened to you is less significant or, kind of side B. And so what we want to do today is I'm going to take the position of the interviewer, and Jen, you're going to take the position of the interviewee. And unlike maybe everyone has different philosophies on when you give interviews, should the person you're interviewing have access to the questions ahead of time? I'm a big fan of, in certain circumstances, yes, but in many circumstances, no. Let's just have a conversation and tell me what's on your mind. And so Jen has no idea about these questions. Why don't we start with a 3-4 minute synopsis of your story, and that way if someone doesn't know, they're coming into the fraternity for the first time, we don't just launch in.
Okay. I got married when I was 22-ish. I turned 22 to my college sweetheart. Both went to college together. We were married for about 7 years before we had kids. We just traveled and had fun. We had our first child 7 years in, and then our second child 2 or 3 years later. 2 years later, I know how old my kids are. And all the while during that time of marriage, my ex-husband was traveling a lot with his job. We actually moved 2 to 3 times. After 2 to 3 years, we'd move so that he could continue his career. I became a stay-at-home mom when I had the kids. I was a teacher for a little while, and then became a stay-at-home mom and was able to do that. And so I spent a lot of time with our kids while he traveled, and I guess I was living in the world of this is just the busy time of life, and we aren't going to connect very well. We're not going to spend a lot of time together because he's working really hard to get this position that he wanted at work. And like I said, it caused him to have to travel outside of, the States, and then also outside the country eventually.
So at some point, did you notice, maybe identify for us, like what year was it at some point where you started to notice, I don't know, it's not what I'm expecting, or it's moving a little bit away from, like, I don't want to say it could be better, because all of our marriages can be better, but did you notice a point in time where you thought, man, it's a little different than what I was wanting?
Yes, but I kept telling myself that it was going to get better because we were just working really hard. So, I feel like it was right around the time that I had our first child. He was traveling so much that he like a week after our child was born, he went back into work, and he traveled the next week. Which, if anyone,
so you had your first child,
yeah. It's rough.
The
your
next
first child.
week, he's
gone
traveling.
Yeah,
he's
traveling
MIA.
for the week. And my parents were around, and so I realized that he had to do that. So he convinced me that he had to do that.
By the way, did you know that there's a song? I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called "Two Sets of Joneses." And
I vaguely remember that.
And so I'll think of the band in a second,
Okay.
but Two Sets of Joneses, but it mirrors exactly what you're talking about.
Oh.
In the song,
I need to read those
he
lyrics.
wasn't there for the birth, but relatively
Yeah.
speaking, same kind of.
So again, I am not connecting the dots. When you're in a marriage that's starting to fail, you kind of don't see the signs until you're out of the marriage, and in hindsight can look back and go, oh, those are some red flags that I missed. And so, yes, as you will listen to my story, you'll be like, girl, what was wrong with you? Why did you not catch the red flags? And I hear you. And yet in the middle of it all, I just didn't see them, because I really did see the best in my ex-husband. And I just want to say this before I move forward. All marriages have two parties, and I know that I have faults as well. And so those also played into maybe his distancing from the family as well. And so, but I can't tell you what those are, because we've never really had that conversation. And so I just want to say that out loud, that's the deal with that. But we ended up, I'll fast forward so this doesn't get too lengthy. The whole podcast is my intro story, basically. Let me fast forward. So, anyway, had my second child, and
We're out of time.
sorry, I not
Sorry,
told you
we're out of
anything. So I had my second child, and he was full into traveling at that point. And I will say that when he left our family, it was that our oldest was 6, and our older son. Sorry, let me use my grammar correctly. My older son was 6, and my younger son was 3, almost 4.
Okay.
In between those times, from 3 years prior to leaving, there was zero intimacy in our marriage. Like I want to zero intimacy, and that caused me great concern. But instead of thinking that he was doing something inappropriate, I thought I must be gross and unworthy, and there's something wrong with me. I'm not doing things right. He doesn't love me that well. And
Right.
so, and that stems from other insecurities that I had, already brought in. But I think that created a very huge insecurity with me, because intimacy is so key and core to a relationship.
Well, and I just want to jump in here. A couple things that I'm gleaning from this. One, this didn't happen overnight.
Right.
And so this wasn't, I think that when we hear about stories of divorce or abandonment, we get to the final day, and we and we say, oh, that, that's tragic and whatnot. But I think what I'm hearing is, no, this out of 12 years, you're seeing a slow, methodical, steady awakening to the reality of this is not going the way that I thought it would be and the way that I think that the Bible says it should be. And so I want to kind of pivot right here and ask you about the spiritual side of your marriage, because you said you guys met at Baylor, it's a Christian university, you got married under the Christian covenant. Was there a moment where you either, so when we have two relationships, I don't know what the math is here, but both parties can distance themselves from God. Both parties can engage with God. One party can distance themselves while the other person stays close to God. One party can distance themselves while the other stays close to God, or both parties can kind of just meander through, right? I mean, there's probably an exact number, but there's a number of variables. What was your marriage like in terms of spiritual sense of, hey, it's year 6, year 7, year 10, like this is where we're kind of at spiritually?
So I say in the beginning, both went to church, both did all of that. When I became a stay-at-home mom with the kids, I joined.
Would you say it was one of the things that attracted you initially was their spirituality?
Yeah, so along with other things, like we were just best friends, honestly, in college. We hit it off the moment we met. And so I was so grateful to marry my best friend, and then fall in love with him at that. It was best friends first, then fall in love. So, I never questioned his faith. Once we were married, I mean, we kind of like both did Bible study together. We had a small group. We went to church every Sunday. We did, we took notes at church. I mean, we were trying to both learn together.
Yeah.
And then I would say around year 7, it just kind of switched, the 7-year
itch.
And I was home with the kid. Well, I was home with our first son, and I would go to the, Mothers of Preschool group, and I got involved in Bible study because I just wanted a community. And so I built my friendships there and started actually taking lots of Bible studies. I studied a tremendous amount of Bible studies. I was very hungry to learn. And at the same time, he was working a lot. He was spending Sundays trying to get caught up.
Yeah.
And so it just was a very easy excuse to not go to church. And so I would say for the last 3 years of our marriage, we did not go to church together that much at all.
So if you were to do like a cross section, like stop time and just kind of do a cross section of your marriage and look at the spiritual side of it, maybe that you could look back, and again, hindsight's always 20/20, but you look back and say, okay, I can definitely see a beginning of a departure from a faith that we both possess, that one of you is kind of leaning in a little more, and one is not just staying neutral, but actually kind of jettisoning, like moving away from. Would you look back, would you say that showed up in behavior and activity as well? Or was it just like evidenced by he's not going to church? Or
the second, he just didn't go to church. He wasn't home a lot.
Okay.
So it was like he was away. He was positioned away from us a long time, like for years. So I didn't really think about like, oh, I wonder if his faith's struggling. I assumed he was taking care of his own spirituality on his own.
Right.
Because he didn't seem like he was anti-Christian.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything that would give me a line
and he
for
wasn't
that.
Curbing your behavior.
No, he loved that I went to Bible studies and was able to make friendships and keep me busy. He liked that I was busy and distracted. Honestly, looking back, that I was very distracted from any sort of like fishing into his life.
Yeah.
And
So the picture you're painting is we're married, we have a kid, maybe one on the way here. We're living, and I know this, but for our listeners, you weren't poor.
No.
Okay.
No. I don't see how that plays into anything.
Well, I think it really does. That you weren't. It wasn't like you were a couple that was living paycheck to paycheck, where you were bonding over survival.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying.
You know
no,
what I'm saying?
that was not the case.
No. And so, in speaking of distractions, all of a sudden now the lifestyle becomes comfortable, where gated community. I think your last in Colorado, it was on a golf course. Like it wasn't as if you could look around and say, not only is my marriage suffering, but we are suffering in terms of socioeconomic levels.
Oh, yeah. We were not suffering
Right.
ever. And no, it wasn't Colorado golf course, but just to be clear, there was a golf course at one point.
Yeah.
We moved up very quickly financially.
Yeah,
and
but the community you lived in Colorado,
Was beautiful.
had a golf course.
It did.
Yeah.
We just were not on it.
Yeah. You weren't right on it, but
No, but yeah,
close enough.
It was
Members only.
very nice.
Yeah.
Golf course.
And so, and I just say that because I want our listeners to understand, when you're going through difficult times in a marriage, one of the greatest moments of dissension is financially.
Financial. You're right.
So you guys were in a position where you've told me before there, and we can talk about this as well, but there's like, how do we distribute those finances, right? Like who has access to those finances? But in terms of having finances, it wasn't as if we were looking around wondering, are we going to pay rent today? That wasn't the case.
No,
he was moving up the corporate ladder, and you were, for better for worse, kind of a Stepford type wife, where it was, I'm living in a community, I'm in a gated community, I'm trying to find community within the community.
Yeah.
But I can see, like, from his perspective, I've checked the boxes, right? Like, I'm doing well with my job, I'm married,
Right.
I've got a kid.
Did everything really right.
Right. And so, like, American speaking,
Yes.
he's like, this is it.
He's living the dream.
Living the dream.
Yes.
Like, I've got everything, but you're noticing on your end, things aren't shaping up the way they should be.
The biggest red flag was not being connected with each other as husband and wife.
Yeah.
So
So
it
when
was
he would
like
go off on these
roommates.
trips, but he'd come home, there was still distance.
Oh, yes.
Even when he was home.
Yes, it would,
Because some
it would
people
be like
travel
come
a
home
lot.
and then I need to go work in the office to get caught up
There you
on the
go.
things I
Right.
missed, and
See,
so
yeah.
he'd come and eat or do certain things, and we take the boys to like fun little outings
Absolutely.
every once in a while,
Right.
But it was very much they were my domain and his domain was work, and that was how it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Forever. And as long as I didn't rock the boat question, I did not have access to our finances, any of them. And I was naive in that and saying, and being told, well, he did that for a living. So why do I need to worry with that? So I was great. 'Cause believe me,
Yeah.
that's not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah,
so
no,
yeah,
and-
if you'll handle all that and I'll handle the household, then
Right.
we were very separate in our roles and it worked.
Yeah.
It worked until I started.
Until it didn't work.
Until it didn't work. And
Yeah.
so,
Because it doesn't ever last in that context where, hey, you've got your role, I've got mine, let's play roommate. But that's about it. Lack of intimacy, lack of vulnerability, transparency with finances. You see yourself in more of a, I'm raising these kids, and yeah, every now and then he throws me a bone with like, let's go somewhere. But if we really were to like look at who's actually raising these kids, it's kind of lopsided.
yeah.
Lot of travel. And I think what you're describing, sadly, unfortunately, is a lot of couples listening to this, a lot of people listening to this will just gravitate toward, you get me. Like, I'm there. Like, this is it for me. So I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because this is a classic, unfortunately not individual, like, oh, we can't relate to that, Jen. This is what so many people can relate to on so many levels of, I'm here in this house. It doesn't feel like we're married. It feels like we're roommates. I don't know what's going on in their life, but we're paying the bills. Like,
We look good on the
we're living
outside.
above our means
Yeah.
in terms of, like, we're doing better than the average.
And we didn't argue or fight. Like,
And
seriously.
why do we need to argue or fight? Like, we're going
it was
on
a very
like,
peaceful home.
Yeah, like
and I will say it was peaceful too, because there was not a lot of time together.
right.
And he was a very likable person. I don't know him
Sure.
well now, but he was very likable. People loved to be around him, so he's very amicable.
Right.
I just didn't see that this was not going to improve. I would say in the midst of it, I thought, this is weird. Is this how all marriages are? And
Yeah.
and the reason I asked that is because I was 22 when I got married. I left my parents' house to go to my college, to go to a marriage. So there was an individual time where I dated around
Right.
and understood how other guys treated. I mean,
Right.
I had boyfriends, but not a lot, honestly. And it just made sense to get married. I mean,
Which
we just,
is
and
the
so,
age where many people
Yeah.
get married.
And so I just I didn't know any different. And so I didn't question a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
other people questioned. I had a lot of people like ask me, doesn't this bother you? I had sweet neighbors,
Yeah.
honestly,
Because
who would
I'm
take
sure,
me
like,
in
you-
and feed
like,
me,
you're
like, give
showing
me
up-
dinners and hang out
Right.
with me. And
because you're showing up to events, birthday parties,
Without my husband.
without your husband,
Often.
over and over
yes.
and over again.
And their husbands are there. And I'm like,
Right.
gosh, their
And
husbands
before
don't
you
work as
know
much
it,
as mine.
yeah, people are starting to like, hey, this is
Let's take
like,
care of
I'll-
Jen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give him a pass every now and then, but man, this is getting out a
It
little out of
became
hand.
evident towards the end that
Yeah.
he was never there.
Yeah,
And
but you're still working hard. You're never thinking about what is about to come.
Oh, I had no
and
idea.
so we're probably gonna have to make this a 2-episode conversation. But bring us up to the infamous moment where he came home from a trip, and now you have 2 kids. Your oldest is 6, your youngest is 3.5, almost 4, and you're up in beautiful Colorado. He comes home from a trip and says what?
so he comes home from a trip, and he had been away for 2 weeks overseas. And so
And was this a business trip, or was it
this was a pleasure trip.
This was a
that he
pleasure
wanted
trip.
to take because he needed to relax.
So in
Say it
addition
out
to
loud,
all
I
of the business traveling,
Yes,
He then said
this was
to
a
you,
once in a lifetime.
I need to
trip
get away
that he
for a
said
couple of
he-
weeks
Yeah.
to golf, I think it was.
It was a
or-
golfing
It was a
adventure,
golf
a golfing
outing
adventure,
with some
yes.
buddies.
Well, it was not buddies. He went to meet the a certain golf crew
So he
that
went
were
overseas.
minor professional.
And
people.
so went and had like a fantasy kind of camp,
Right.
kind of like, I'm going to go play this
Yeah.
golf thing, which again, 12 years into a marriage, most husbands would be fortunate to get away for a day. Like, hey, I got some buddies
am.
that want to go
Sure.
play down the street. He says, I've got a 2-week opportunity. And you were like,
So no,
have
let
fun.
me explain this conversation.
Yeah.
So I remember it very vividly. This is
There
a
you go.
core memory of
Yeah.
all of this. He said he wanted to go on this 2-week adventure vacation. I think they're called American Express Dream Adventures or
There you
something.
go. Okay, yeah,
I can't remember
sure,
what they're
yeah,
called.
yeah.
And I said, well, if you're going to take 2 weeks, why don't we take the kids to Disney World or something and do a family trip? Like we haven't
Seems to make sense.
had a trip together in a really long time.
Right.
The kids
It
would
would seem
love
like
to go
that
to
would-
Disney.
that would make
I
sense.
miss you. We all miss you. You've been working so much. I
Yeah.
literally remember saying that.
Wow.
And he said, well, this is a dream of mine. And I really, really want to go on this. If you could just let me go on this one dream, like it'll never happen again. This is the dream come true vacation. Now, he's an avid golfer. I understood that this would be an incredible experience for him. Honestly, could he have done it the year later? Yes. Could he have split it in half? Maybe.
Okay,
but
so put a pin in that for 10 seconds. fast forward to now, we're married.
Yeah.
I'm an avid golfer. And let's say that, 2-3 years into our marriage, because I want to keep the age of the kids in perspective. So now we got 5 kids. They're, let's say 2-3 years in our marriage, they're like from 13 down to like 6 or whatever, maybe 8.
Yeah. Something like
And
that.
I say to you, I got a chance of a lifetime. I have a chance to go away for 2 weeks and play golf for 2 weeks.
I would probably, it depends on what stage of marriage. Because right now I'd be like, no. Am I coming with you?
No.
I
I'm
would say-
going away with the guys.
I would say, no, that's a bit long.
Well, yeah, like that.
But
just,
I also
that just
want you to
seems
have,
like most
but we have a very
people.
healthy relationship. And then
Yeah,
I would
but
say like, I
even
want you to
then,
experience
there
that.
is like
But even when you go to the Grande for like,
two
two
a
days.
day, an overnight.
yeah,
It's an
it's
overnight.
good enough.
That's overnight, right? That's where I think most spouses should be like, hey, that's fun for you.
Yeah.
Overnight,
Sure.
I can manage
Couple
the
of days,
house
whatever,
for
yeah.
1.5 days.
2 weeks is long.
But 14 days.
Yeah, it was long.
In addition
With
to
littles at home.
yeah,
all
but
by
in
myself.
addition to like
No family.
sometimes I'm there, a lot of times I'm not. I'm gonna go like
I
again.
know.
Most people listening would say Jen.
Jen, shake
Like
me.
now, honestly though, because this is the point. Were you in a position, do you think, looking back, where you could have said no? Like, would that have gone over well?
No, it
because,
wouldn't.
Right. So
You-
some relationships are built around, this is kind of a moot point. Like, I'm just going to, it's perfunctory for me to ask.
That was very much it.
Okay,
It wasn't a negotiable situation.
yeah.
It would have been wear her down until she just finds fine, just go, whatever.
Right, see,
which is
yeah.
what ended up happening anyway.
And just by that alone, there's a whole bunch of, if we were to use your marriage as a case study,
oh goodness.
like a bunch of, we can look at it and say, okay, here. But because, and I appreciate you saying that, because it's like, yeah, but in the middle of it,
what
like
are you
I'm
gonna
not
do?
doing that. Yeah, I'm not like dissecting my marriage.
You can
to
say from the
where-
outside, oh, I would have like left him and,
Right,
and blah, blah,
right.
blah. Well, yes, if you're a strong woman who has,
Right.
has an incredible self-esteem, I get that, but there's a lot involved in leaving a spouse. It's not just easy do it. It's, and those of you who've gone through it, you know how extensive it is to pack up and leave. It's not easy. So I didn't. I thought, well, this is angering to me, and I'm super frustrated that this is happening.
Right.
But there's nothing I can do about it.
And
And
the
I want
fact-
my boys
and
to have a
By
dad.
the way,
I want my boys to be okay with their dad.
And by the way, the fact that he would offer that, like he would ask for that, says a lot about where he was at. Like, I was asking whether you should respond, like yes or no. Husbands, you should never even ask the question. Like, that shouldn't even be, if you've got 2 young kids at home and you travel for your job, I get it, like business calls. And there's we can talk about that. But for you to come home on top of that and to say, in addition to me being absent, physically absent for 2 weeks out of the month, 3 weeks out of the month, I want to get away for 10, 12, 14 days on a pleasure trip. That's insane. Like you're in sin as the leader of your home to even like broach that subject. So you're putting your spouse into a very awkward and almost absurd position to have to even entertain what that's even all about. So before you even want to go that route, please know that God's not a fan. Christian men aren't a fan of you even wanting to do that in lieu of what the reality is, which is what Jen just said. Hey, option A should be, I've got a window. Let's get away as a family. Let's go to Disneyland. Let's go somewhere and reconnect but you selfishly choose to, no, I've got this opportunity to go away and play golf for 2 weeks. You've got to be kidding me. So anyway, he comes home from the trip, because we're going to have to wrap it up with what he did, and then we'll take the next episode and kind of dive into the reaction. But
Okay, so just what he said.
just
Okay.
give us the
short version?
cliffhanger
Okay.
of what he said, and then we'll
So
that
I-
will
so
bait
he-
our audience to
Okay,
come in
to
the
come
next
back the
episode.
next time.
Right.
He said he came in.
So he did the trip.
Yes.
Was there any communication during the trip?
Oh goodness, that's a whole lot. A little bit. There was a time when I couldn't.
Like, did he send like, "Hey, I just pured a 3-wood"? Like, was it?
No,
So
I didn't hear from him for days.
Okay, so there were
So
like,
I didn't
and
know-
this was out of the country,
Right. So and there was no like WhatsApp then, so I couldn't.
Yeah, this is like
communicate.
what,
It
mid
was-
'90s or something, or late '90s.
When did we? No, 2000. I got
Okay, early 2000s or something, yeah.
Mid 2000. Yeah. Yeah, it was late 2000s.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, late 2000s. That's not true.
Right.
It was 2000. Oh,
7, 8, whatever.
no,
yeah.
12. No, I'm sorry, 11.
11. Okay, all right.
Okay, beginning
Yeah.
like the very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
January 2000.
Right.
So, I couldn't get a hold of him from the cell phone. I had a flip phone. If you
So
remember
there were
meeting me,
days
there was a
on
flip
end
phone.
where like no contact.
No contact, and I really worried that something had happened to him, but I didn't know
Right.
how to get a hold of a hospital in a foreign country.
Oh my goodness.
To see if he had something happened, because
Right.
I knew he landed, and then he was like MIA for 3 or 4 days, and then I get a call that
Wait,
he had to go to the
hang
hospital
on.
while he was
So-
there. And I was like,
he
because
landed-
the insurance company called me and asked me if I could verify that
He landed when he was going,
So
not
bad.
when he returned.
He landed in the place where he was going.
Okay, he was going and landed.
And then I didn't hear from him for
And then
a
it
few
was
days. Like I
MIA.
kind of
Okay.
like I had like contact
I
initially,
gotcha.
and then I didn't have contact for a couple 3 days. I get a call from the insurance company that I need to verify information that because he's had to visit a doctor.
This was Asia or
It was Thailand.
okay, yeah, it was Thailand. Yeah,
So-
Asia. Oh,
Yeah, specifically Thailand.
Right.
And I got really worried, so I finally got a hold of him, and I guess he had to visit the hospital for something.
Sure.
But he didn't give me a lot of information still.
Right.
And then, like, again, we didn't talk for a little while, and then he comes home. So again, I felt very, I don't know, just weird. But you should talk to your spouse when you're away. Like, miss me a little.
Right.
I don't think he missed
Right.
me a little.
Like honestly, if I'm in that position where I'm golfing for a couple weeks, I'm at least sending a couple of emojis or something with "miss you." Like that's common sense. Like just like you were given a gift to get away for a few weeks and play golf. Throw her a bone, like, just, hey, miss you, love you, whatever. And that's bottom feeding. And he didn't even do that.
Well, I mean, I can't remember specific. I will say I don't have the text saved.
Yeah.
But I do remember.
But it's not on the front of your mind like,
got-
oh, no, he
I
was
got
like
worried.
3, 4, 5 times a day. He was
Oh,
like,
no. There was a time where I didn't know how long, where he was.
Right.
There was a significant time because I remember speaking to his mom
Oh, my
about it, and I was like,
goodness.
I don't know where he is.
Right,
I
yeah.
think he's alive. I think
Right.
he's fine.
Yeah, maybe.
But don't worry your spouse like that.
Right.
Like, good gracious.
Seriously.
So anyway, when he came back, I'll leave you with this. He came back, and the first thing he said when he walked in the door,
So he pulls in, he shows
I
up.
can literally picture
This
this.
is
I
night
can
or
see
day?
it. Oh, I can't remember the time because it was inside. I don't remember what it looked like
All right.
outside.
He
That's
walks
not part of my
in.
memory.
All right. He walks in.
Walks
This
in.
is 2011.
No, it was. I'm sorry, it was 2010.
2010.
At the end of 2010.
Okay. Walks in, and you're excited
like-
to see him.
It was like around Christmas, a little after Christmas break. So it was the beginning of 2011.
Okay.
I remember. Okay.
January 2011. And hadn't seen him for a couple weeks. Walks in,
And he says, I was going to give him a hug and a kiss.
give him a hug and a kiss.
And he
like,
said,
hey, welcome
you
home.
should stay away from me. I've been in a foreign country, so I could be carrying a sickness.
Hey,
and
I
so
don't
you
know
shouldn't-
what I'm carrying
So
here.
you shouldn't kiss me.
Because
And
it's
I was
the
like,
21st
okay.
century, and I don't know, like, what, like, I may have the bubonic plague. I may have typhoid.
And I didn't laugh in his face when he said that. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Now you would, like,
And I'd be like, what the heck? I don't care. You're stupid. It's like, anyway.
But you didn't.
So I didn't.
You stayed away.
So then he went downstairs to, like he unpacked or whatever, went downstairs, turned
You
on the
have a
TV.
multi-level
I had
house.
a 3-story house.
You have a 3-story home.
We had a basement.
In a gated community
it
with
was
a
in
basement.
Colorado. We had a basement. I don't know. There's
enough room
It was great.
where you can
Yeah, he went
distance
downstairs
yourself.
to watch TV.
He
I'm
comes
assuming
home,
the
says,
kids were already in
might
bed. I
have
put the kids to
something.
bed
Kids are in bed, so I'm going to go downstairs.
and watch TV.
And you just stayed upstairs.
Well, I put the kids to bed.
You put the kids to bed.
And so I
then,
came downstairs and I said, I don't understand why you're not like talking to us or hanging out with us. Like, we've missed you. You've been gone for 2 weeks.
Right.
Can you at least like, I don't know, hang out with us?
Like,
and I said,
update.
I just don't do. And I literally said, do you even want to be married to me anymore?
So you just threw
I
it
just
out
threw it out there. I said, I don't know what's happening.
Wow.
Well, it had already gotten really like, I'd already like questioned this
You were
quite a
done.
bit. When we lived in New Jersey, I remember because I couldn't find him there one time. He wouldn't answer his phone overnight in
Yeah.
New York. He worked
Yeah.
in New York. And I literally started looking up hospitals to call because I thought something happened to him.
Yeah.
He didn't answer his phone overnight. And I remember when he came home, he wasn't feeling well. And I asked him, are you cheating on me? And he flipped.
This was in New Jersey.
This was in New Jersey,
Okay.
prior to Colorado.
Okay.
And I said, are you cheating on me? And he's like, no, I would never do that.
Right.
Why would you ever ask me that? And
Right.
got really angry at me.
Right.
But again, at that point, I had, and Luke, sorry, I didn't say his name, but Luke, our son Luke, he was like 1.5.
Yeah.
So fast forward like 2.5 years, and I'm still like, I don't know, things are weird.
Yeah.
So I
Well-
said, do you even want to be married to me? And he looked at me and goes, I don't know. I don't think so. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Gone
I
for
said,
two weeks.
"Are
Comes
you-
home. Downstairs in the basement. Not
like,
a lot
I don't
of
know about that. I can't answer
intimacy,
that.
hugging. And you come downstairs and you ask the question.
Yes, the one that's been on my mind for years.
And instead of saying what he said in New Jersey, which was how could you say that and getting defensive, he actually now turns the corner of,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
okay,
I need to think about that.
okay,
So that like was a punch to the gut. And I said, I don't know I don't know how to respond to this.
yeah,
And so weirdly, I just went upstairs. And because, okay, you know this about me. You've helped me so much and talking about conflict. I hate conflict. I want to run far, far away from conflict. And so for that was conflictual to me because I didn't know how to respond. And so I just walked up. I was like, okay, well, let me know when you want to talk about that.
yeah.
Okay. And he kept watching TV. I'm sorry. This sounds so horrible to say out loud. I know some people are like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
That
They're gonna listen to this episode and DM you like we gotta go have coffee.
I'm okay now.
Right.
I look back and I would also DM me and say, honey, I need to talk to you.
Right.
There's some things going on that you probably don't know about.
Instead, you went upstairs.
Yes, I went upstairs.
We're going to, that's the cliffhanger. Jen goes upstairs after receiving news. Do you want to still be married? Quote, I don't know. Join us next episode as we find out what happened. Now, Jen and I are married, so you don't
So
have
you
to be
kinda
Sherlock
figure that
Holmes
out.
here. But I hope you're interested as I am as, okay, even though we know, what happened, what were the details? Like what exactly happened? And again, it's not gossip. It's not spilling tea. This is to help us all understand when you're in the moment, these conversations are in real time, and to react the way that maybe we think we should, or looking back, oh, I should have said this or I should have done this. I hope we can all appreciate this is one person's story, like real story about, yeah, I could have done this, but this is what I did. Here's what's cool. God is still good in all of that. He's still in charge, even though sometimes we act like, what is happening here? God is not surprised by this. He's not agitated by this. But I do want to find out what the thought process was as you heard that news and now had to, like, 2 kids, marriage of 12 years, you hear the news of, I'm not sure I want to be married anymore. We'll tune in next time to find out what Jen did after she received that news on the Unwanted Fraternity. See you next time.
Turn on the mic, the static clears. Unwanted brotherhood of tears. Grief can weigh us down alone, but here we find a common home. The voices speak to heart and soul. In darker times they make us whole. Through Jesus' light we find our way. In every night there comes a day. From shadows to the dawn we rise, hope reflected in our eyes. Jesus guides with hands unseen.